She's gone, Thomas, and this time not even your money can bury what you did. The housekeeper's voice echoed off the marble walls as police swarmed the Cape May estate. Teresa had vanished, but what they found in the basement made everyone wish she'd never married him at all. 2 days earlier, Cape May, New Jersey. The ocean breeze didn't reach the estate that sat like a silent god atop the cliffs. Morning light struck the grand windows of the Delacroix mansion, a billionaire's playground built on white marble and secrets. Teresa stood barefoot in the kitchen, slicing strawberries. Her white silk blouse covered the bruises from the night before. Every motion was precise, quiet. Her hand trembled slightly when she reached for the knife, but she held her breath and steadied herself. Behind her, on the hallway marble, dried blood had been scrubbed clean, or so Thomas thought. He liked things pristine. Pain didn't fit his image. He'd left that morning for a business meeting in Manhattan, flying out in a private helicopter like a man too busy to be cruel. To the world, Thomas Sterling was Cape May's crown jewel, tech mogul, generous donor, CNN's Man of the Year. But inside these walls he was something else, someone else. Teresa didn't cry anymore. She had stopped weeks ago. Now she listened to footsteps, to silence, to breath. Listened for the click of his belt. She lived in patterns, in rituals, things that kept her alive. The staff acted blind. The security team kept their mouths shut. The housekeeper, Elena, lingered longer than usual by the door each morning, scanning Teresa's face like a woman waiting for someone to ask for help. But Teresa never asked, because she knew what happened to the last person who did. Meanwhile, in the glossy boardrooms of Midtown Manhattan, Thomas laughed with his investors, his Rolex catching the light. The same hand that struck his wife now held a pen, signing a $200 million deal. "Family's everything," he said to a reporter during a coffee break. "My wife, Teresa, she's the strongest woman I know." He smiled for the cameras, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, back at the estate, the staff went home. The chef packed up, the cleaners clocked out, and the gates locked at 9 p.m. sharp. Security cameras turned, but never inside the house. Thomas made sure of that. In the living room, classical music played softly. Teresa sat on the velvet couch with perfect posture, ankles crossed, hands folded. Her lip was swollen from the night before, but she wore lipstick over it. "Dinner's cold," she said quietly as he walked in. Thomas didn't respond, just loosened his tie, looked around the pristine living space, and then at her like a smudge on glass. "Did you say something?" "I said, dinner's cold." He tilted his head. "Are you correcting me, Teresa?" She didn't answer. That night, no music played, no lights stayed on, only a scream, and then silence. The next morning, birds chirped, waves rolled, and the Delacroix mansion gleamed like nothing happened. Thomas stood in his robe, sipping espresso on the balcony. But across town, Elena sat at her dining table, staring at her phone. She had taken a photo of Teresa's arm, the bruises, the imprint of Thomas's ring. She hadn't meant to, but something in her said, "This time, don't delete it." Back at the mansion, Teresa walked barefoot through the garden, face calm, steps slow, but inside her chest, war. Something in her had cracked open. She looked out at the ocean, then at the house, then at the black Range Rover parked by the garage. She didn't cry, she planned. "She's gone, Thomas, and this time not even your money can bury what you did." That moment hadn't happened yet, but it was coming, and everything leading up to it started with one spark. The day began with sunlight. Cape May shimmered. Tourists sipped overpriced lattes downtown, and in the Delacroix mansion, Thomas handed Teresa a jewelry box like nothing had happened the night before. "A gift," he said, voice warm as syrup, "for being so obedient lately." Inside the box lay a necklace, pure sapphire, bordered by diamonds. She didn't reach for it. "Put it on," he said. She did, slowly. To anyone watching, it would seem like love. A billionaire gifting his beautiful wife something sparkly after a romantic evening. But the bruise on her rib told a different story. Later, while Thomas took a call on the terrace, Teresa stood by the grand piano in the parlor room. Her fingers hovered above the keys. Music used to be her escape. Not anymore. Something in her chest shifted. She turned, walked down the hall, entered the east wing, a part of the house Thomas rarely touched. There, behind a linen closet, was a door. Locked. She remembered the key, one he didn't know she'd seen him hide in his cigar case. She snuck back, retrieved it, and in less than 3 minutes she turned the lock. Click. Inside, a single windowless room. No furniture, just old boxes, a safe, a file cabinet, and photos. Stacks of them. Girls. Women. Black and brown mostly. Some smiling. Some not. Teresa's blood ran cold. She picked up a file. Her hand shook. A name she recognized. Kimberly Tate, a waitress who'd gone missing from Atlantic City in 2016. Everyone assumed she ran off, but her driver's license sat right there in the drawer under Thomas's private stationery. A second file, Janelle Rowe, a personal assistant who'd disappeared after reporting harassment. Teresa backed away from the cabinet, breath quickening. Thomas wasn't just abusive, he was a predator, a collector. That night at dinner, she spoke gently. "I think I want to visit my sister in Newark next week." Thomas looked up from his steak. "You don't have a sister." "I do," she said softly. "You've just never asked." He blinked, tilted his head, smiled. "All right," he said. "One night." But she wasn't going to Newark. She was going somewhere he couldn't follow. 2 days later, Elena noticed something different. Teresa hugged her before she left for the evening. A full hug, long, tight, the kind that says goodbye without saying the word. Elena didn't know why it made her cry. That same night, Thomas returned from a corporate gala. The estate was quiet, too quiet, no music, no scent of lavender candles, no Teresa. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, jewelry still in the box, car parked, purse untouched. She had vanished. At first, Thomas called her name, walked the halls, then shouted, then screamed, then started tearing the house apart. Because he knew she'd found something. And if she told anyone? It wasn't just his marriage that would end, it was everything. The next morning, sirens, police cars, reporters, and a housekeeper who had seen too much for too long. "You can't fix this with press statements," Elena said as she unlocked her phone and handed it to the detective. "You can't PR your way out of this." And Thomas, he just stood there, because for the first time in his life, he had no control. She disappeared without a trace, but left behind the truth he buried for years. If this story has you locked in, don't just watch in silence. The team behind these stories works hard to bring real emotion to life. Subscribing helps us keep going. So if you're still watching, don't be that person who skips out. Hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing, but it means everything to us. Thomas hadn't slept. By morning, the Cape May estate no longer looked like paradise. It felt like a tomb. Police swarmed the property, drone teams, search dogs, reporters swarming the outer gates. Thomas played the grieving husband. Again. "She struggles with mental health," he told them. "She's done this before. Vanishes when she's overwhelmed. Please, just help me find her." But his voice cracked on the last sentence. Not from sorrow, from panic. Because he'd checked the locked room, and the drawer had been opened. The files, gone. She didn't just run. She took everything. Detective Ryan Wallace from the Cape May PD didn't buy the performance. "You waited 6 hours to call her in missing, Mr. Sterling. That's odd for someone who says she's fragile." Thomas scoffed. "We've been married 8 years. I know her patterns." Wallace nodded slowly. "And yet, she broke them." That afternoon, Eleanor returned with a lawyer. She wasn't just the housekeeper anymore, she was a witness, and she brought receipts, photos of bruises, audio recordings of screaming, messages Teresa had secretly passed her, handwritten notes folded into laundry baskets. "I stayed quiet because she asked me to," Elena whispered to the lead detective. "But now she's gone. If I don't speak up..." she might never come back. Back inside his study, Thomas punched a hole in the wall. His hands bled, not out of guilt, but fury. Control was slipping. The media caught wind. Social platforms lit up. Whereas Teresa trended nationwide, women from Thomas's past began speaking out. Old assistants, models, interns, it was all unraveling, but he still had one thing left: fear. Back in a motel 2 towns over, Teresa sat in front of a burner phone, watching the chaos unfold online. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She hadn't wanted it to be public, but now that it was, maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Still, part of her wanted to go back, not to him, but to the house. The files weren't enough. There were videos, footage. She'd seen the camera lights in that locked room, the basement, the one room she'd never dared enter, but someone needed to. 3 nights later, Thomas received a letter. No return address, no signature, just 5 words, typed in bold. You buried them too deep. His hands trembled for the first time in years. At this point, what would you do? Try to run, come clean, or burn it all to the ground before anyone else does? Drop your prediction in the comments. This story's only getting darker from here. For the first time in 8 years, Thomas Sterling couldn't leave. The Cape May estate, once his untouchable kingdom, was now a crime scene. Detectives had cordoned off entire wings. His private jet sat grounded. His security team had been replaced by state officers. You're not under arrest, Detective Wallace told him, but you are under investigation. Thomas laughed bitterly. I'm a billionaire. Do you think I don't have lawyers for this? Wallace leaned in. Teresa isn't the first woman who vanished after getting close to you. She's just the first who planned it. 2 stories below, the basement door creaked open. Forensics entered with cameras and gloves, brushing dust from surfaces no one had touched in years. Except someone had touched them. A USB drive sat beneath the floorboards, wrapped in cloth. Inside the file, timestamps, footage, audio. Teresa had found it, and left it right where they could find it. Every minute of her abuse was catalogued, and not just hers. 3 blocks away, in a borrowed car parked outside a quiet Cape May church, Teresa sat hidden under a scarf and sunglasses. She watched the news on a cracked screen, saw Thomas pacing in front of police, saw the estate roped off, watched Elena speaking with calm fury into a mic. Teresa had never imagined what freedom would feel like, but this wasn't freedom, not yet, and as long as he breathed, he could bury the past. That night Wallace returned to the mansion and handed Thomas a photo. It was a still frame, low resolution, black and white, but unmistakable. Thomas, standing over a woman on the floor, not Teresa, someone else. What is this? Thomas asked flatly. You tell me. Then the real trap closed. Wallace turned and called out, Bring her in. And there she was, Teresa, alive, in person, in this house. Not a ghost, a witness. Thomas went pale. His breath caught. She walked into the room unflinching. No makeup, no bruises, just truth written all over her. And the silence that followed was louder than any slap he'd ever given. He took a step forward. Teresa. She didn't blink. Don't speak. Wallace nodded. We brought her in on her terms. She's safe. And now, you're not. For 48 hours, Teresa remained in the house. Not by force, by law. She was the key witness. The files, the footage, the bruises, the staff testimony, all tied to this location. Every time Thomas turned a corner, she was there, calm, whole, watching. She'd become his ghost, and he couldn't stand it. In the dining room, Eleanor sat across from Teresa during a break in questioning. He looks afraid now, Eleanor whispered. Teresa didn't smile. He should be. 2 nights into her return to the estate, Teresa stood in the master bedroom alone. Not as a wife, not as a prisoner, as a witness. Everything had changed, but the shadows in this room still knew her name. She touched the headboard where she'd once laid trembling. The same place where Thomas whispered apologies after fists, where bruises were kissed like promises, and where her screams never reached past the soundproof walls. Flashback. 4 years ago. It was raining. Teresa, fresh-faced and ambitious, had just graduated from Rutgers, a scholarship student, raised by a single mother in Trenton. The world had opened for her. Internships, law school acceptances, everything. Then came Thomas. He'd seen her waiting tables during a corporate retreat. "You have a brilliant mind," he'd said, "but no one will ever see it if you're scrubbing silverware." He offered her a position in his firm, executive assistant, full benefits, double the salary of any other offer. She took it. 6 months later, he proposed. At first, the mansion was a dream. She sent photos to her mum, her cousins. "Look where I live now," she'd text. But the pictures couldn't show what came next. The rules started small. No short sleeves, no social media, no visits from friends. Then came the isolation, the surveillance, the threats, and finally, the blows. Every time she thought of leaving, he reminded her, "No one will believe you. You think anyone's going to take your word over mine?" And the worst part? She believed him. Back to present. Teresa opened the drawer of the nightstand. Still there. The letter her mother had mailed 3 weeks before she died. "You don't have to stay strong for the world, baby. Just stay alive long enough to be free." Teresa folded it slowly, pressing it to her chest. Downstairs, Thomas stared at the report Wallace had left on the table. Surveillance footage, witness statements. A letter from an ex-employee named Vanessa Del Rey, a name he hadn't heard in nearly 10 years. She'd been an intern. He thought he paid her enough to disappear. Apparently not. In the West Wing, Elena found Teresa seated at the window, watching the ocean. "I don't know how you stayed," the older woman said quietly. Teresa's eyes didn't move. "Because I didn't just survive him. I studied him." Elena tilted her head. "You mean—" Teresa turned. "I know what scares him. I know the things even he buried so deep he forgot them." That evening, Wallace handed Thomas one last file, unsealed. Inside, birth records, payments, paternity tests, and one Polaroid photo, a baby, a girl, born to Vanessa Del Rey, eyes unmistakably his. Thomas's world split in half. That wasn't in the plan. That secret was supposed to die with her. But now Teresa had it, and he knew if she could bring that into daylight, he was done. So now the question is, should Teresa expose the child too, or protect her? If you were in her shoes, would you reveal everything or hold on to that one final truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The ocean hummed under the moonlight, its rhythm steady, as if the waves themselves had witnessed everything and wept in silence for years. Teresa sat curled on the wicker chair by the balcony, wrapped in one of her mother's old shawls, something Elena had retrieved from the storage box she kept locked beneath the stairs. She hadn't seen that shawl in years. The lavender threads were faded, but the smell still carried something warm, something safe. Inside, the mansion had changed. It no longer whispered threats. It whispered truth. "You look like her in that," Eleanor said softly, setting down a steaming mug of tea beside Teresa. Teresa nodded. She always said, no matter how long it rains, the sun's stubborn. They both chuckled. It was the first time Teresa had laughed in weeks. Eleanor sat beside her. "You know, when you hugged me before you left, I thought I'd never see you again." Teresa looked at her. "I didn't think I'd ever come back." "But you did." "Only because I wasn't ready to let him rewrite the ending." They sat in silence. No need to fill it. Outside, the wind picked up. Trees rustled. Inside, healing happened without ceremony. Teresa looked down at the flash drive in her hand, the one retrieved from the basement. The one that didn't just contain footage, but names, dates, victims, so many forgotten women. "I want to release it," she said. Elena's face turned grave. "Are you sure?" Teresa nodded slowly. "It's not just about what he did to me anymore. It's about all of them." She looked toward the distant horizon. and the little girl he tried to pretend didn't exist. Later that night, as Teresa sat alone in the study, the house phone rang. A landline. No caller ID, just a breath on the other end. She froze. Then a voice, small, young. "Is my daddy in trouble?" Teresa's hand trembled. "Who is this?" "I found your name in my mom's closet. She said you were smart." A pause. "I'm sorry if he hurt you." Then the line clicked. Gone. Teresa stared at the receiver. A child. His child. Alive. Curious. Hurt. But kind. The thought nearly broke her. Not because she was afraid, but because for the first time, she didn't want revenge. She wanted peace. She found Elena in the hallway. "I'm going to tell them everything," she said, "but not to destroy him, to save her." Elena's eyes filled. She nodded. "You're still here, still feeling this story. And maybe, just maybe, part of you knows someone who's lived a piece of it. Someone like Teresa, or maybe like that little girl. Don't let stories like this fade away. Subscribe. Not for us, for them. Because the more we tell the truth, the interview with Channel 9 aired at 7:30 p.m. Teresa hadn't planned on watching it, but she did. She sat alone on the velvet couch, the same one she once bled on, watching herself speak into a camera, voice steady, gaze calm. "This is not just my story. This is the story of every woman who ever disappeared without anyone asking why." The segment ended with a photo collage, victims whose names never made headlines, now front and center. Teresa had named them, given them their voices back. The world reacted, support poured in, but so did the hatred. By 10:00 p.m. her phone had crashed twice. Hundreds of messages, emails, posts, gold digger, fake tears. "Why now? You knew who you married." The louder she spoke, the louder the silence around her became. Then came the leak. Footage from the investigation, never meant to go public, showed Teresa in the basement, pulling files. Someone had posted it online with the caption, "If she was scared, why did she stay so long?" Within hours, the narrative began to shift. Thomas's PR team was working overtime, planting doubt, spinning stories, leaking staged home videos of fake marital bliss. By morning, the comments had turned poisonous. Teresa woke up to the sound of glass breaking, not in the house, online, her reputation, her safety. And the final blow? Elena's voice, shaking. "They froze the account," she said. "The safe house fund. Everything you had saved, it's gone." Teresa's chest tightened. "How?" "Someone inside the system. It's all been locked. He's still pulling strings." Teresa walked outside and sat on the edge of the marble fountain, clutching the last $60 she had in her coat pocket. For a moment it felt like all of it, the escape, the truth, the strength, had meant nothing. She stared at her reflection in the water. She didn't recognize the woman looking back. Not because she looked broken, but because she looked angry. Inside the estate, Detective Wallace slammed the phone down. "He bought a judge," he muttered. "Or a tech. Someone. Everything's been stalled." Teresa stood in the doorway. "So that's it?" Wallace shook his head. "We're not done, but we're bleeding time." Teresa stared at him, eyes hollow. "I bled for years." She stormed back upstairs, past the piano, up the grand staircase, back to the master bedroom, and opened a drawer she swore she'd never touch again. Inside, a burner phone. She dialed. 1 ring, 2. A voice answered. "You said you'd never call." She whispered, "I need a favor." Eleanor confronted her that night. "I told you, if you walk back into the dark, you may never come back out." Teresa looked at her, eyes cold. "He's already taken everything I am. What more is there left to steal?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "Your soul." But Teresa didn't respond, because in that moment, rage had replaced fear, and revenge whispered louder than healing. Cape May was quiet that morning. Not peaceful, just quiet in the way a city gets before a hurricane makes landfall. Teresa hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days, not Elena, not Wallace, Not even the woman in Newark who ran the shelter that saved her life all those months ago. She didn't eat much, slept less, but she thought, constantly. The burner phone lay face up on her nightstand. It buzzed once. A message, tomorrow. 3 p.m. East storage hangar. Bring the originals. We'll finish this. In the kitchen, Eleanor stood barefoot, holding a cup of coffee she hadn't sipped. She watched Teresa move in silence. You're leaving, aren't you? Teresa didn't lie. I have to. Eleanor's voice was brittle. You don't owe him any more of your life. Teresa turned. I'm not doing this for him. Elena stepped forward. Then who? A pause. The girl, Teresa said. The one on the phone. His daughter. Elena blinked. She's just a kid, Teresa continued. She doesn't know what kind of man he is, but she will, one day. And when she asks what I did, I want to be able to say, I didn't stay quiet. 2:47 p.m. The wind whipped harder across the Cape May harbor. Teresa stood at the edge of the east hangar, dressed in black, flash drive clenched in her palm like a crucifix. She didn't bring security. She didn't bring Wallace. She brought nothing but the truth. Inside, Thomas waited, slick suit, dead eyes. For a man who had lost everything, he looked untouched, but his voice gave him away. I thought you'd be smarter than this. Teresa didn't flinch. And I thought you'd be rotting in a cell by now. He stepped closer. Give me the drive, walk away. I'll bury the lawsuits, the smear campaigns. Hell, I'll even make you rich. She studied him, then opened her palm and showed the flash drive, but didn't hand it over. I'm not here to negotiate, she said. Then why? Because I want you to look me in the eyes and realize you lost. He stepped forward. You won't release it, he said. You're not like me. A long pause. No, she whispered. I'm not. Then she dropped the drive on the floor and crushed it beneath her heel. Thomas blinked. What the hell are you doing? Teresa smiled. That was a copy. She walked past him, phone in hand, already uploading the real files to the news network downtown. His voice cracked behind her. You don't get to win. She turned once. I never needed to win. I just needed to stop losing. Back at the estate, she found Elena packing the last box. Where will you go? Elena asked. Teresa shrugged. Somewhere quiet. You're not afraid? Teresa looked at her, calm as the tide. I've lived in fear. I'm done renting space in that house. 3 months later, Cape May bloomed with spring. Tourists returned. The boardwalk buzzed. The Delacroix mansion, once a shining symbol of power, now sat abandoned. Its gates rusted shut, ivy curling over its marble face like vines reclaiming a ruin. Inside, everything was empty. Furniture auctioned, chandeliers removed, history scrubbed, except for the whispers. People still slowed down when passing the estate. Some said they saw her. Most just remembered. Thomas Sterling was now inmate 62417, sentenced to 38 years without parole, not for Teresa, not just for the beatings, the torment, the recordings, but for everything, for the women no one looked for the victims who had no last names, for the child he tried to erase, and for underestimating the one woman who never raised her voice but refused to stay silent. In a quiet brownstone in Jersey City, Teresa sat on a balcony overlooking the skyline. A small garden bloomed at her feet. Tomato plants, basil, lavender. She didn't wear makeup anymore. She didn't cover her scars. She didn't hide. Elena arrived on a Saturday, holding a small cardboard box. Teresa raised an eyebrow. What's this? Elena placed it down gently. It came to the estate before the final sale, addressed to you. Teresa opened it slowly. Inside, a small sketch, drawn in crayon. A girl with curly hair, a crooked smile, and a heart on her shirt. On the back, a message in pencil. Thank you for telling the truth. L. Teresa pressed the note to her chest. That night, she made tea and stood by her window. The the city twinkling beneath her. She thought of her mother, of that first night in the mansion, of the bruises, the silence, the fear, and then of now, breathing without flinching, existing without apology, and choosing, every single day, not to be a victim, but a survivor. A phone buzzed beside her. It was a message from a women's shelter in Philadelphia. "Would you speak to the group next week? You don't have to share details. Just let them hear your voice." Teresa replied without hesitation. "Yes, I'd be honored." Because the voice Thomas tried to erase, it had become an echo that wouldn't stop ringing. Not in Cape May, not in courtrooms, not in whispered conversations between women who finally found the courage to say, "Me too." But most importantly, not inside her. Never again. Do you believe true love can survive even after being tested this hard? Or is peace, real, unshakable peace, the greater kind of love we rarely talk about? Share your truth in the comments. And if Teresa's story moved something in you, hit that subscribe button, because every time you do, you're helping us give a voice to someone who thought they'd never be heard.